to defend yourself. He argued then also that the first law of nature is self-preservation, and self-defense is a mode of that. He argued that freedom is so important that if you don't have it, you even affirm your humanity. Therefore, he said in his classic phrase, freedom by any means necessary. That's an ongoing debate. You know that has not been resolved yet. And in a new society where violence is outlawed, certainly King's position is correct. You know that the higher morality is that humans evolve where they don't need to hurt each other, where they don't think of killing each other. But we don't live in that, and therefore Malcolm took Cabral. Cabral would later coin Malcolm's conversation and say, we have to be reluctant soldiers. We go to war, but we don't like it. We must really hate what we're doing. Because otherwise, if you learn to like it, you become like the people who are doing it. That your response must always be defensive. It must be able to be grounded in and justified morally. And if you cannot do that, then you do reflect the concept of the other side. Finally, both King and Malcolm argued. And I say I don't want to take a position and put one down or the other. I said to you, and I just want to repeat so you'll have it for the record, in the most moral situation, certainly nonviolence is the higher morality. But it is immoral for people to take advantage of your morality and to assault you without check. In fact, as Robert Williams taught, the capacity to use violence often eliminates the need to use it. And Malcolm said, one of the worst things about letting yourself be beaten and not respond appropriately is that it encourages people to do it again. And it gives them a false concept of themselves. But King would say, regardless of their false concept, you stand strong because you're doing right, not because other people support you, or not because they even appreciate you, but because it's right. This is the constant conversation, and you can choose which way you want. Finally, as I said, King and Malcolm argued for the creation of a just and good society. King said it should be based on justice, and then on peace, and then on mutual respect for each other. Malcolm argued for freedom, justice, and equality. King argued that Europeans a lot of times ask for peace before they have justice. But he argued peace is not just the absence of tension, it's the presence of justice. And Malcolm said, as long as we don't have freedom, you have no business expecting to have peace. That if you want a peaceful society, it must be based on justice. Both King and Malcolm make this same argument. Also, they argued that any society must be based, any just and good society must be based on mutual respect, where people accept differences, not as a source of conflict or a reason for conflict, but as a source of human richness. And that's a beautiful way to end, to talk about for just a moment the project of creating a just and good society, which in fact translates as a multicultural society. There can be no just society unless there's a multicultural society. What is multiculturalism? It is thought and practice that is based on a profound respect for diversity, for human diversity as human richness. It expresses itself in three basic ways. First, mutual respect for each people and culture. Second, mutual respect for each people's right to speak, right and responsibility, to speak their own special cultural truth and to make their own unique contribution to how this society is conceived and constructed. And finally, multiculturalism is based on a mutual commitment to search constantly for common ground in the midst of our diversity. This last point is very important because if we live in a society that is a context for maximum human flourishing, we must always search for common ground in the midst of our diversity. Right here in Iowa State, I'm not sure what y'all do here, but it seems to me that it's a good time in America's history to try to get beyond George Washington and Thomas Jefferson and their narrow conception of the American society. It seems to me that it's time to stop having classes named music appreciation and you only have European music in it. I would like to hear Native American classical music, Chinese classical music, not to mention my own. We lived in a Eurocentric world which taught Europe was the center of all value and relevance, and everybody else was at best margin. That's essentially what Eurocentrism is, an ideology and practice of domination based on the fundamental assumption that all relevance and value is centered in Europe, and that all other peoples and cultures are at best marginal and at worst irrelevant. We were taught then we had no classics, that only Europe had classics. Therefore, I went to music appreciation class and studied Beethoven, Handel, and the rest of them, Ray Charles and Ma Rainey, Bessie Smith, Coltrane, Bird, and King Pleasure. They didn't make it that year. But what is a classic? What is a classic? Let's not mystify it. A classic is nothing but a work of such creativity that it deserves both emulation and preservation. In other words, not only do we want to preserve it, but we want to use it as a model for future human creation. And everybody has that. It undermines the basis for a just and good society to argue that there are no classics except in Europe. We must face the reality that this country is not a white finished product, but a multicultural, ongoing, unfinished project. And that every people, everybody has both the right and responsibility to speak their own special cultural truth and make their own unique contribution to how this society is conceived and constructed. But how do we do that? And that's another part of creating this just and good society. We must do it by service. King has said, everybody can be great because everybody can serve. You don't have to have a college degree. Of course, that's no reason for you to drop out. I'm not saying that. You don't have to have a college degree. You don't have to know European history. You don't have to have invented something or written a long book. Each of you can serve. And that's the beauty of greatness in the world. Isn't that why most of us who are religious or who think of people in terms of their greatness, don't we talk about the leaders, the religious leaders, in terms of their service? Isn't that how we think of Muhammad and Moses and Jesus and Buddha and Malcolm and the Honorable Elijah Muhammad and Sojourner Truth and Harriet Tubman and Mary McLeod Bethune and Anna Julia Cooper? Don't we honor them because they served, because they gave their lives so we could live? That is essentially what they have done for us, and we owe it to them to in fact honor them by continuing their legacy. The legacy of King and Malcolm is a great one and a joint one because they gave religious sanction to social resistance. They spiritually and intellectually inspired an oppressed people who had not been so moved, been moved so deeply by other doctrines in the quest for freedom. They made social passivity immoral, an active contradiction to the will of God and to the best practice of religion. They argued that God wanted freedom and justice in the world, and we were partners in that project. King and Malcolm reinforced the need and moral imperative to resist social evil. So when you see the return of racism on campus, when you see the right wing express such social meanness and such mean-spiritedness, and you sit in the student union and play bid whist, or watch those things called soap opera, General Hospital, where all the people must be sick by the title. When you do that, you are in fact collaborating in your own oppression. Secondly, Malcolm and King's legacy is that they challenged preachers to stop talking about flying away and face the fact that we would be here a long while, and that we must, in fact, make life better for people right now. King said, I am bold enough to believe that people should not suffer, that everybody should have the material means to live a good life. Malcolm agreed, and they both went to the people and talked to them and organized them around their own interests. And it reminds us of what Nkrumah said, go to the people, start with what they know and build on what they have. Thirdly, King and Malcolm were important because they also internationalized the black struggle. They, along with Robert Williams, Fannie Lou Hamer, and other African leaders of their time, won for us much needed moral and political allies. They were great also because they offered a moral mirror to U.S. society and challenged it to deliver on its self-declared goals and even go beyond them. Also, they were important because they served as a transition in black life and in the history of this country. They served as a transition to even a greater challenge to create a just and good society. And I would like to close by simply posing to you the question that they would pose to you: what are you doing to create a just and good society? What are you doing to end racism and classism and sexism? How do you live your life? People talked about King's dream being unfulfilled. It should be unfulfilled because it's an ongoing project. It's a quest for ever higher levels of human liberation and human life. It is unfulfilled also because it is generational, and it speaks to Fanon's challenge that says each generation must discover its mission, and having discovered it, either fulfill it or betray it. King and Malcolm were special, but you can be special also. You can, in fact, black people, brown people, red people, yellow people, white people, men and women, right here in the U.S., make a difference, pose a new paradigm for human society. Fanon said it is up to us, this generation, to pose a new paradigm of humanity. He said, let us leave the old Europe, where they're always talking about man, but where they find him, they murder him. Let us dare to create a new world, start a new history. Let us invent, let us conceive, let us think new thoughts. He said we can do anything as long as we don't do two things. One, try to catch up with Europe after where they're going. And second, not become obscene caricatures of Europe, so that not only do they have contempt for you, you have contempt for yourself. Remember then the words of the ancestors. King said we must act in such a way that years from now, when historians write history, they will say there lived a great people, and they injected a new meaning, new justice, new righteousness, and dignity in the veins of civilization. To be more exact, he said, when history books are written in future generations, historians will have to pause and say, there lived a great people who injected new meaning and dignity in the veins of civilization. This is our challenge and our overwhelming responsibility. I close quoting the great ones on whose shoulders I stand. Continue Malcolm, who said, appreciate your history, dare struggle, and achieve freedom by what means you need. I remember also Fannie Lou Hamer, who said there are two things we should care about: never to forget where we came from and always praise the bridges that carried us over. We've tried to do that tonight, but praise not only the great ones like Malcolm and Hannah Julia Cooper and Martin and Mary McLeod Bethune, but praise also your grandmother and your grandfather. Praise the woman down the street and the man on the corner who did not wear kente cloth or speak an African language, but still taught us African values, telling us speak truth and do justice and walk in the way of righteousness. I call for you to remember Mary McLeod Bethune, who taught us the challenge of being black. She said we are heirs and custodians of a great legacy, and we must bear the burden and glory of that legacy with strength, dignity, and determination. She says, I'm glad I was born black. I do not use my blackness as an excuse not to achieve. She said, I'm glad I'm born black because if I'd been born white, I would not have achieved as much as I did because I would not have had the obstacles to overcome that I did and achieved in that process. She said, we must in fact honor the history that our foreparents have in fact given us. I'm glad, she said, I was born black, because if I had not been born black, I would have not had the obstacles I had and therefore not have achieved as much as I did overcoming them. Remember too, Paul Robeson, who said the battlefront is everywhere, there is no sheltered rear. It's a lesson Malcolm and King would have agreed with. No sheltered rear in school, in church, in mosque, in temple, in synagogue. Wherever you are, there is a struggle to pose a new paradigm of how humans ought to live and to bring it into being. Remember too, Cabral, who said the struggle is a long and difficult one, therefore mask no difficulties, tell no lies, and claim no easy victories. And remember too, Anna Julia Cooper, who said what we do, we must do together, man and woman. She said, black man and black woman, stop letting the oppressor be our instructor. How can they teach us how to live? How can a culture that says a dog is a man's best friend teach you about human relations? She said there is a female as well as male side to truth. And those who do not honor it do damage to both male and female. In fact, they are unbalanced. We must learn to love again. We must put down the color purple and the black man's guide to understand the black woman, which is really a madness book. We must, in fact, speak to each other. We must be able to talk love, not just at the point of acquisition. You know, people can claim anything at that point. We must be able to talk love every day. We must be able to be reading. Turn to your woman, brother, and say, I missed you before I met you. I needed you before I knew your name. And finally, we must remember what the ancient Egyptians taught us. We are not just in history, we are history. And given that, they said, I quote, every day is into eternity, and even 1 hour is a contribution to the future. Let all of us dare to take this hour in this day and construct a more beautiful and human future. That is our contribution to honor Malcolm and Martin's legacy. Thank you.
Amigos de Panorama Love, Truth and Honesty, Ricardo Prieto en tu radio y por tu emisora favorita. A esta hora nadie lo hace mejor, 11:34.
Liceo Sólido y 96.
I can't believe I'm still with you. Made some changes, that's true. There have been times I tried to leave, but still you'd hold me. And you always would show me you really cared, I know. You've got that special way to make our love go stronger every day. Got me loving you, what can I do? Time and time again I thought that we were through. Got me loving you, what can I say? Just can't understand what's got me loving you. Loving you is all I do. Never gonna let you go.
Ramón DJ Monster Mix.
Just tell me what you see, just what the
Think about it. 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 Think about it.
There's something in the air that feels like winter, the kind we used to know. Yesterday can seem like such a long, long time ago. Who could ever count the miles between us? But now I know it's true. Imagine if I said that all my dreams are dreams of you. Think about all the things we shared. Think about all the times we cared. When all of your dreams have come and gone. Think about me and I'll be there. Think about images we've drawn. Think about all those empty songs. Whenever you're sure that I won't dare. Think about me and I'll be
Think about it. Think about it. Think about it.
Let your body go as you listen. Let it flow through your system. It'll take control of your mind and make you move your behind. As it grooves, you feel the tension in the air and now you're hype. You're getting down because the sound is just your type. GMNDOSE's kicking it to you right. So come on and party hardy all night and wiggle it just a little bit. I wanna see you wiggle it just a little bit. As it grooves, wiggle it just a little bit. I wanna see you wiggle it just a little bit. As it grooves, wiggle it. As it grooves. As it grooves. kiss me? Do you still touch me? Do you still please me? Do you still squeeze me? Do you still love me? Do you still touch me? You never wanted to start, 'cause you're just bad of the heart.
You really didn't want me, baby.
Oh girl,
Oh, yeah.
Escuchabas Mixeo Sólido y 96 suena.